I'm sorry? Okay, can you please close the door? All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Convo Couch. I am Fiorella Isabel. I was on earlier with Niko House, and we were talking about what went down in DC. I already did a video on it. We have some more videos to come because we did catch the Trump speech that nobody is talking about, where he was talking about how third world countries have better elections than our country, which is something that we've been saying for a while now, for years. Um, after being there and after talking to several of my friends who were there, Steve, Andrew were there, Jason Burmas was there, several people were there that I didn't really fully know, but that I know they were there about the Stop the Steal. Tim Canova was there, he spoke. Um, I wanted to really focus on not so much what happened as much as why it happened. And the one thing we're all missing when we're talking about a coup, right? Because everybody is like enraged when you say this isn't a terrorist attack, this isn't a coup. Um, and they're clutching their pearls. They're so fucking angry that you're questioning the fact that this was a coup. And I think this was a coup, but it's not the same coup that most of media, including in leftist media, is talking about. I think what went on there was a coup to cement the overtake and the marriage of the surveillance state with our government. And within that, obviously, within our government, which is an oligarchy, we have Silicon Valley and these mega billionaire corporations that control so much of what we see, hear, and think. And that was the huge coup, the coup that is of the American people to prevent any sort of dissent, any sort of backlash, questioning to the government, which is our American right. It is always our right to question the state narrative, especially when we know that we've continuously been lied through to for years with RussiaGate, right? We saw what happened with RussiaGate and how we were lied to. We've seen the documents get declassified, and still people are peddling that story. Same thing with the Syrian chemical attacks that were deemed fake, and we are still hearing people use the same weapons to try to basically discredit and destroy what other people have exposed already, things like Julian Assange exposed in WikiLeaks. So if you want to call this a coup, you can call it a coup in that respect. Now, the reason why I don't think it's a coup in the sense of Donald Trump trying to overtake the government was because uh, Donald Trump has literally no friends in DC at this point. Like, even his VP abandoned him, and that's his own fault. Like I always say, he surrounded himself with the swamp instead of getting rid of the swamp, which is what he was supposed to do to begin with. And a lot of people fell for what he said, and a lot of people are very angry at him and at Mike Pence. And we're at a point where people are looking for a leader. They've been screwed over by their leaders, whether it's Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and then even including Bernie Sanders, who represented the opposite end of the spectrum for the vast majority of Americans. And it's interesting that we're at this point. We've hit this point where a lot of people are politically homeless. And there was so much civil unrest leading up to this moment. You can go back to George Floyd, you can go back to the pandemic, you can go back to the people getting evicted, and that is going to increase as we go on. Small businesses closing down, corporations making mega, mega money, and we trillionaires coming in with Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, right? So we're at a point where, of course, people are upset. Now, I talked about briefly, and I'm going to be sharing this video. It was about one of the women who was protesting at the not the Force Vote, the Stop the Steal rally. where she was talking about how Americans were poor and suffering, and the government was letting them down, and politicians were letting them down. And her last name was Babbitt. I can't remember her first name, but she was the one that posted this video before she died, and she was one of the people that got killed in the Capitol altercation, right? And I've spoken about how this is very strange because when we were there at the Capitol for Force the Vote, when we were there at the Capitol the last 3 days that we were there was a strong police presence for a small group of people compared to when you take it into proportion, the amount of police presence in the Capitol for hundreds of thousands of people. They were warned. They knew this was coming. They knew that this was going to happen. So why didn't they have people there? So the way a lot of the left-wing media, more progressive, neo-progressive types are presenting it is Trump is at fault because he incited violence and he pushed this coup. And of course, so he should be held responsible for this coup, right? And that's not, that's ignoring a lot of things. It's ignoring the fact that when Donald Trump was giving his speech back by the White House, but not super close, but like in the field where he was talking to everybody, he was talking about election reform. He was talking about a fraudulent election. He was talking about all these things. And the signals were so scrambled that you, even with a good, your own Wi-Fi or your own 5G and your own type of internet, the only people that were able to stream live were mainly the people with satellites. And obviously, we don't have a satellite. We're not there yet when it comes to our equipment. But there was one conservative outlet streaming on YouTube, and we were there watching it live, but then as we were leaving to go to the next spot, because we had to go to our car, they were also streaming it. And the things Donald Trump was saying were mainly about the election. He was questioning the election. He was saying it was an American right to question the election. He was saying that third world countries have better elections than we do. He was saying all these things that were true. He was talking about the media and fake news. There's a reason why you're not hearing a part of that speech because they don't want you to hear that because really the reason they took his Twitter down and they did all these things is because he is causing a dissent among the right. And this is the right-wing populist movement that's developed as a result of the Democratic Party, and this didn't happen overnight, losing the working class to the Republican Party. The Republican Party managed to get them because it was Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. Had it been Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump, you would have seen many people in the Midwest, many people in the South vote for Sanders in 2016 because he was going out there and talking and having those conversations. He was never for the TPP. He was never for NAFTA. In fact, they tried to smear him at that point when he spoke out against those trade policies and those economic policies of neoliberalism. And he was also smeared when he called out fake news. Fast forward to 2020, he shifted his whole his whole focus shifted, right? And that's when he started losing some of these people to other candidates, whether it was to Trump, to Tulsi, to um, independents, libertarians, or just people not voting. A segment of those people still voted for him, but it wasn't the same type of campaign. The reason all of this matters is because Bernie Sanders had the opportunity to question the elections and he didn't. And he had multiple people go up to him with lawyers with advice, and he just didn't do it twice. And we know through WikiLeaks that the DNC did rig the primaries in 2016 against Bernie for Hillary Clinton. That is a fact you can't deny because of WikiLeaks. But that doesn't mean that the Democrats suddenly decided everything was going to be fine. We saw what happened in 2020 with the primary. We've talked about it many times. Now, this matters because if that is true, that means that there was a huge push to question the government from that point on. And then we're talking about Donald Trump being this guy who literally completely just fucking exposes things inadvertently. Like he doesn't try necessarily. He's just not a prolific speaker when it comes to how he says things. He's not a politician in the sense of embellishing his words with this sort of floral decor, and he has a way to just say things that is very like to the point, uh brusque, and just not necessarily anything fancy. And the neoliberal establishment hates that because they were warmongers. Obama was a warmonger. He took us from 2 to 7 wars. He droned the hell out of many people. He sanctioned the hell out of many people. He overthrew democratically elected leaders in Honduras and Libya with Hillary Clinton. And a lot of people didn't know that because the media never spoke about it. And the media never held him accountable. And there was also the, well, if you say anything against Obama, you must be a racist. And so all of that happened, and these people were just pushed to a breaking point, right? And so when we're questioning the election, when you're questioning all these things, when you're seeing the surveillance state get bigger and bigger under the Obama administration, he prosecuted more whistleblowers than any other president up until this point. And of course, Donald Trump's administration is going after Julian Assange. Donald Trump could very well pardon Julian Assange, but he's not doing it, and he absolutely should as a goodbye. Now, several Trump supporters still think that Trump is going after the deep state. And the deep state is real. Just because they say it and they think it's one thing doesn't mean it's not real. They're still thinking that Trump is still going to go after the deep state, that there's going to be this moment where he exposes them. That's part of their theory. And then the left is like, no, Trump is just crazy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He just needs to get out. And then the liberals are like, oh, well, it's Russia, Russia and Trump, Putin and Trump. The reality is the truth falls in the middle, as always. There is things that Trump has exposed because he's Trump and he's a narcissist and he wants to look good and he wants to appeal to his base. I don't think Trump is some sort of messenger that's going to like help like actually absolve people. He's a billionaire at the end of the day. He has more in common with Joe Biden than he has with his supporters. And that's the reality. And that's how I feel about every single politician, including even Bernie Sanders, who has completely just become an extension of the Democratic establishment, even as an independent. And so when we're talking about these things, we have to understand how we got to the point. You can't just be at watch the Capitol and watch like a 30-second clip and watch something and then say, "Oh, okay, this is what happened. It was just a coup. It was Trump and he sent his minions." No, because Trump doesn't have any power in DC. The only power he has is his base that is angry, and understandably so to a degree when it comes to the elections, because I may not agree with their ideology, but they have the right to question the elections. We've been questioning the elections for decades, since forever. And you can go back to Bush versus Gore, and you can go back to how that was rigged. And it was okay to question the elections. There's always been this questioning of the elections with Russiagate too. It was okay to question that there was a hacking of the elections. There was that boogeyman. The only reason it's not okay now, it's because it exposes a subset of the political elite that made up, comprised of three-letter agencies, comprised of the military-industrial complex. And I'm not saying Trump is challenging that, but inadvertently, he's lifted the ugly mask off of America, or the mask, and shown the ugly face of America. And it's something that a lot of people want to keep hiding, right? A lot of people don't want to see that. So now we're at this point where people are talking about a coup. Well, let's look at how many coups America has pushed all over the world in decades and decades of our existence. Let's look at how many coups. Those are real coups. Do you know what that looks like? It doesn't look like this. It looks more so well thought out. It's far more violent. It's far more organized. But the one thing I can say is that the way this was planned, it's a type of coup where it's not coming from necessarily the Democrats or the Republicans. It's coming from the establishment, the oligarchy wanting to have an excuse to impose these crackdowns of mass surveillance, mass censorship, and to stifle any sort of dissent that is coming because they know it's coming because people are hurting and people are suffering and people have nowhere to go and nothing to do but be angry. And they know that. And so because of the years before that led up to questioning, that led up to people being exposed to the fact that more people own more wealth than the bottom half that three people more own more wealth than 60% of Americans. And when people are realize that, when they see that during a pandemic their government didn't have their back, that there was no social safety nets, that politicians are hypocrites, that Gavin Newsom is out there eating at a restaurant while shutting down other restaurants which are people's livelihoods, that Nancy Pelosi gets to go get a haircut and everybody else has to stay home shut down, including the salon workers, that Mitch McConnell is the senator in one of the poorest states in our country, and it doesn't change. He keeps getting elected. So when people are at this breaking point, the people in power, the powers that be, know that there has to be a way to control that and curtail it, or it gets out of hand because nobody's buying this shit anymore. Like, when I talk to people outside of the political realm, when I talk to normal everyday Americans who don't necessarily pay too much attention, who aren't necessarily watching the show, they tell me things that are common sense. They say, well, something happened. That wasn't normal. How did the police let them in there just like that? Why didn't they have the protection? People are questioning what's going on. You just don't hear about it because we're stuck in our echo chambers. When you talk to a progressive person that is very DSA bound and thinks like, oh yeah, Bernie and Ilhan and the squad, they have a different perspective because they're stuck in their fucking echo chamber where they see that Trump is still evil that we need to get rid of, and that's it. And like this had to be Trump and white supremacy and blah blah blah. And that's also the liberals who pay attention to their liberal mainstream media, and they see it as the one way. But when you talk to people who aren't necessarily don't have a stake on either end, they start saying, "Well, there's something wrong with this. It doesn't make sense, and it's weird, and like they don't know what's going on." The establishment knows this. They know that people are lost. They know that people are restless. And when you have a population like that, a massive population that you may or may not be able to control, this is what happens. Unrest happens. And so what better mechanism, what better time to use that to formulate things that they were already planning? For instance, dismiss the questioning of election fraud. Number one. So discredit anybody that ever peddled anything regarding election fraud. Number one, as if we hadn't done it before, it doesn't matter. This time, if you question it because it's Trump and his goons, you are a white supremacist sympathizer, you are crazy Trumper, you are QAnon, you're buying into these things just for questioning, even though that standard did not apply to the Bernie Sanders folks questioning the election for the last 5 years, even though that standard didn't apply to any other progressives questioning the elections, even though that standard didn't like apply when we back in 2000, right? Like it's nothing different. It's just who is doing it and the ideology that has been vilified. I'm not saying I agree in any way, shape, or form with white supremacy, but what I am saying is that not everybody who supported Trump is a white supremacist. And that's something that people can't admit to, that they don't want to hear. They want to say that 75 million people are Nazis and put them away in an island somewhere and pretend they don't exist. And that is number one, impossible. Number two, extremely stupid and authoritarian. That's not how things work. As much as I don't agree with an ideology, that is not how you combat a difference of theory. In fact, it is how you strengthen it and enrage it. And that's not what we should be doing, but that's what people want to do right now because they're so easily manipulated through their emotions. That's how the liberal establishment has manipulated Democrats and progressives through emotional, like, just blackmail. right? Like emotional blackmail. Like if you don't do this, then we're not going to do this. We never have leverage as a progressive. You never have leverage because you give it. We saw that the squad voted for Nancy Pelosi despite many of her supporters, their supporters saying no, don't do it, put Medicare for all to a floor vote. We got 2 floor votes for impeachment, 0 for Medicare for all in the middle of a pandemic. Their priorities are showing. Why the fuck would they do anything for you if you give up so easily, right? Why? Well, and now they shift your attention from the shitty stimulus they gave, which many still haven't gotten, which could be a tax deduction for most, $600, no health care, the nomination of a horrible, horrible person, Nancy Pelosi, who is one of the most corrupt politicians in modern history, CIA asset Pelosi, who gave Trump all of the money and more that he wanted for all of his military budgets, who gaslighted Americans and played politics just to make sure Trump didn't get the upper hand. That woman was voted in. So, like that, like why would you trust that anything is different? And the reason is because people need to believe that they'd rather believe in the lie than admit that the lie, like that they were wrong, right? And so what's happening now is all of these things are unraveling. So it seems like you're seeing the fracturing of the left, but what you're really seeing is the shift towards the right in the Democratic Party and people falling into this fascistic authoritarian narrative of, oh, this has to be a coup, this is a terrorist attack. And like I said before earlier on Niko's stream, it is an insult and a fucking joke when you call this a terrorist attack. And I've seen the left, progressive media like Democracy Now! And others call this not just a coup, but a straight up terror attack. And the like to call it that, you're actually being an extremist and you are mocking what we do all over the world, how we bomb and sanction Syria, how we've bombed and sanctioned Iraq, how what we did in the Middle East and in Libya. You're mocking all of these things that we've done, the real bombs, the real drones, the real sanctions, and the real destruction of these countries in the Middle East. And you could say the same for the vast majority of countries in Latin America. It's disgusting what we do. And when you call this a terrorist attack and you clutch your fucking pearls like a moron, oh, it's a terrorist attack. Oh, the white supremacists are coming after me. You minimize what is the reality, what our country does to other countries. And this isn't a bunch of working class uh people who may or may not, some may absolutely be white supremacists. I'm not saying they're not, but the vast majority, when I was there, I did not see that. I did not experience that in any way, shape, or form. And that's what I'm going to report. I'm not going to lie to make people happy and get a certain narrative and get a certain audience out of it. I'm going to report the truth, and people don't like the truth. People say they want the truth, but they don't. People want to be reassured for the opinions they have already made up. And we have to shift that thought process because that is what screwed us time and time again. Even the progressive movement, they say they want the truth, and a lot of them don't. They just want to be the new gatekeepers of a different type of Democratic Party, but they don't really want to change the system. So what we're seeing is the unraveling of two basic extremes. We have the extreme, there are the, hardcore, we gotta take our country back, patriots, and, have the law of God and all those things that I don't agree with, like all those things that I think are horrible, and who think, that they're the ones that are going to lead this and bring back our country. Exactly. And Trump has fomented that sentiment. He absolutely has. I don't think there's any denying that he has fomented that spirit of, oh, I'm not the only one that feels this way. And he has taken advantage of that emotion as well. But then there's the other side, the people who said that they were anti-fascist, the people who said that they were for all cops are bastards and that they wanted this sort of general strike and that they were going to go guillotines and eat the rich. When it came down to it, they literally chose to work with the Democratic Party, to still have trust in these politicians that weren't giving them anything, to literally work against those of us who were actually trying to force the vote, who were trying to actually talk about censorship with Julian Assange and free speech, to dismiss it as a non-issue, to really just be little pawns for the establishment. And they're turning this around and saying, no, we want justice, we want equality, as long as you agree with us. As long as you agree with everything we agree with, then that's fine. But otherwise, you're a Nazi white supremacist sympathizer slash, uh, white supremacists carry water for them, blah, 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 whatever it is, a Trump, whatever it is, like QAnon. And those are the two things right now, right? And those are the two groups that this country, the people who move the pieces of this country, are taking advantage of, because they want to pit these people against each other. Like, they want a civil war. This is what I mean by the coup, is they want to use the possibility of civil unrest, deem it a terrorist attack, whether it is you're a leftist and you're fighting for uh, equal pay, or you're fighting for a better stimulus, Medicare for all, and all that, you're going to be struck down the same way as a Trumper. In fact, they just literally passed this piece of legislation where they were pushing for a crackdown on any Trumpers, any sort of MAGA supporters. But you're like, okay, well, those are just MAGA folks, right? I don't have to worry about that if I'm not a MAGA person. No, but you do, because all it takes is for you to be protesting for something else, and them to be there too, and they're going to associate you with that. And even not that, even if you are protesting, let's say you want rent cancellation and you're protesting that, they're going to use the same mechanisms, because they're not just going to target only MAGA folk. That's not how it works. It's going to be one type of law, or several types of Patriot Acts 2.0, 3.0s that come in, and they're going to say, you know what, any sort of anti-government lawlessness is a violation of your right to protest. It's not acceptable. It's not covered under that, so you could be arrested for that. And that's what's going to happen. So when you're cheering for somebody like a person who's a Trumper, or somebody on the right getting shut down off of Twitter, Facebook, Parler, whatever it is, and you are saying that's okay because they're fascists and they're Nazis, what defines what is a fascist and a Nazi? Because if we let the authoritarian left define authoritarian left define what a Nazi is, literally everybody who's a Republican is a Nazi, and that's just impossible. Literally 75 million people are all Nazis, and that's just it's unreasonable. So when you have a blanket statement like that, and when you push the government to do that, when you help the FBI, how can you call yourself an anti-fascist? You're working with the police state. You're asking for state sanctioned police killings. I mean, I got in an argument online because I was not okay with people getting killed regardless of who they were. And like, there was no proof to me that this person was an actual literal Nazi. That word gets thrown out all the time now. Oh, you don't agree with me? You're a Nazi. Oh, okay. Like, oh, you support Trump? You're a Nazi. It's like, what? Like, no, that's not how it works. That's not the reality of the world we live in. That's your fucking echo chamber that gets assurance from your friend, and then that, and like, you live in this world that is completely artificial, and it's just not real. And so what, like, how am I, and I am the fascist for saying it's not okay to kill people. It's not okay for the police to kill people. Like, that's not right. Like, I'm ready to fight the oligarchs. I'm ready to fight the elites. I'm ready to fight the three-letter agencies who have caused so much more damage than this guy in his little furry hat, in his little furry outfit would ever do. Like, seriously, like, the CIA, the NSA, the intelligence agencies, and the military industrial complex have done actual coups and terrorist attacks to remind you, if this were about Donald Trump's incitement of violence. He would have been taken off of Twitter when he was inciting violence with another fucking country like Iran and when he almost started World War III. He would have been taken down when he said something far more racist and xenophobic. If that was about inciting violence, this is not what it's about. Juan Guaido wouldn't have a fucking Twitter, which AOC follows, if this was about inciting violence because he tried to overthrow a democratically elected leader with our help. Half of our politicians who have incited violence, like Joe Biden, and the fucks that voted for the war in Iraq, and the fucks that lied and lied and lied and peddled Russiagate, all of these folks, they would all be completely shut down, taken down for fake news, for violation. This is bullshit. It's not about Trump inciting violence. It's about Trump saying shit that causes people to question whether or not he's genuine about it. That's beside the point. Some people are going to believe him, some people are not. I go to the bigger part of what he says is half of it is true and half of it isn't. And because I know I study elections, and half of the things he says, you have it's not the full story, but he is bringing up a questioning. And when you start questioning the government, and when you get people to a point where they're at their breaking point and they're also questioning the government, and then you get people when they're at their breaking point and they're also questioning the government, one of two things is going to happen. Either the working class is going to come together and they're going to realize they're being fucked by the whole system, by the oligarchs, and they're going to say, I don't agree with you, but why don't we fight in the next election for who can win and actually like take back control of our government, demand shit from our electeds, blah, blah, blah. That can happen. Or the opposite happens, where instead of fighting the oligarchs, you end up fighting each other. So I'm trying to go the route where we have conversations with people and we convince them. And as Niko was talking about, he's had a Trump supporter say to him, hey, like, I voted for Trump, but now the majority of Americans are not like that. And Bernie Sanders said this too. Back in 2016, Bernie Sanders said, no, I don't think the vast majority of Americans are racist. Like, he literally said that. And like, now that is being used against some of us who are saying, I'm telling you, that is not the case, especially someone that's lived in the South. I've lived in the South, I've lived in the Midwest. I know how, the middle America thinks, and I know how middle America, what they've gone through and how they've lived and what they valued. And I'm not gonna sit there and tell you that my friends in the Midwest or in the South are all a bunch of racists just because they voted for Trump. I mean, they might be misdirected, they might be wrong, they might be a lot of things, but to say that somebody is a full-on Nazi in a state where people were pushed away, they were pushed to a breaking point, is disingenuous, and it is not right, and it's gonna cause us to have a civil war that I refuse to be a part of, because you're not fighting for anything. You're fighting for theories that you believe in that are completely not posed in reality. The real thing that we need to be fighting for is equality for everybody, healthcare for everybody, the end of regime change wars across the world, um, a change in our system where we can help small businesses instead of corporations, where we can have co-ops and teach people what that is. When you don't have to label every single thing as an ideology, but where you can have conversations about how we're gonna fix this shit, because a lot of people agree. Most Republicans and Democrats agree that we need a healthcare system that covers everybody, regardless. They just don't necessarily have that conversation because it is kidnapped by the mainstream media who put people at odds with each other. That, and politicians sometimes don't know how to present the idea. Like, I've spoken to people, Republicans, who were agreeing with me on a lot of really leftist issues because of how I explained it, and because of how I made it make sense, because it's honest and transparent. It's not based on me making assumptions about the person first. And I'm trying to say that we have two options here, and we're going to go one way or the other. Right now, according to many people in the military, it seems like we're going to go towards the part where Whitney Webb was talking about, where you had the DHS memos. We know that they knew that this was going to happen. We know that they did this on purpose. That they let people in, and then they framed this whole narrative right after The impeachment proceedings are being pushed now, and we're going to see how that happens. But then, as well as the a demand for of resignation for Republicans who were questioning the elections, which is ridiculous because it's a congressperson's job to do what their constituents want. And if your constituents are questioning the election and you don't question it, then you're not doing your fucking job. So that is unconstitutional, and that is a dangerous precedent what Cori Bush was proposing, which was, of course, legislated a day before. And all of these things, like it, we know all of this, right? So what it looks like is going to happen is there's going to be some sort of, whether doctored or natural, retaliation on January 20th, and we're going to have another altercation that they can use as a means to crush any sort of government dissent, so any sort of questioning. And that is 1984, when you start being told that you can't think this way, you can't question, because it's one thing for you not to agree with the election and say, okay, well, I think people just didn't vote for Trump because of how he handled COVID. You know, that's the reasoning I get. Like, I think people just didn't vote for him because of COVID. And I say, okay, cool. Like that's what the whole point was, is for you to think that, for you to say that. But I have the right to question it and say, well, look, we've never had an unprecedented amount of mail-in ballots. We've never had an unprecedented amount of a delay the way this was done. We didn't have a pandemic before. This is, you know, all these factors go in, and oh yeah, by the way, we can't look into these machines, their proprietary software, etc. And that is my right as an American. And if there's plenty of me who are questioning the elections, it is the right of Congress people to do that. But now it's turned into, if you have questioned the elections, not only are you a Trumper, but it's your fault that what happened on Capitol, at the Capitol. And it's crazy because we got blamed for that, for even talking about election fraud from the leftist perspective. And somehow that means we're inciting this. No, like, it's my fucking American right to fucking question the elections, you morons. Like, that you shouldn't be little sheep that don't question anything. What's this? How do you think we got here? How do you fucking think we're here right now? Like, what in what world are you logically even having these thoughts? You're swallowing. What is the difference then between a progressive and a neoliberal when you're literally peddling the same fucking trash narrative without question? When Nancy Pelosi gets out there and says this is the most democratic election of our time, that right away makes me say, holy shit, it's probably not. Just based on that alone, not to mention everything else that I've fucking been talking about for the last 3 years. And then when they say, oh, by the way, yes, this was a coup, this was a terrorist attack, when all of it, mainstream media, Silicon Valley, politicians in the establishment, all line up and say, yes, this was a coup, this was a terrorist attack. Do you think that by now, like, I'm gonna be stupid enough to say, oh yes, they're right. Yeah, that's it, done deal. No, like, what have you learned in the last fucking 5 years, progressives? That the Democratic Party is your fucking best friend. You somehow still think, some of you, that the Democratic Party is better than the Republican Party, and they're not, because they're controlled opposition. You have Joe fucking Biden over there telling you he wants a strong Republican Party, meaning he wants controlled opposition. He doesn't want people doing the whole right wing populism, because some of those people are questioning things. They might be on the complete opposite end of the spectrum as myself, but they're questioning things. And no, the horseshoe theory doesn't fucking exist, by the way, because I am not going to agree with leaving my who I am, my morality, my desire for justice, just because of me having a conversation with somebody else. That doesn't mean I change where I stand and who I am and what I'm fighting for. That just means I give equal opportunity for their voices to be heard. Because as much as I can't stand some of the ideology that puts religion and imposes restrictions on women's bodies and all of these things that I could sit here and talk about, and, you know, like, sound like a radical commie, like they the right makes Kamala and Biden look like, when they're fucking not. They're global capitalist conservatives. Um, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I am going to be the same person fighting for the same issue, but I think it's fair to give the other side an opportunity, and people need to stop showing the whole fucking paradox of intolerance, because it's really just a neoliberal way of looking at things, because there is a limit to, okay, this person is at 555 6th Street, Los Angeles, California. Go, they're gonna, I'm gonna kill them right now. That's a little bit different than saying, oh, well, we're gonna march down Pennsylvania Avenue and then please be peaceful, blah, 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 which is the other part they're not showing. That's not inciting violence, and we've shown many examples of what could be taken as inciting violence, and I don't agree that those even are inciting violence on the Democratic side. This is just being manipulated through people's emotions to make them feel like, oh, we're getting these white supremacists, Donald Trump's America, we're gonna bring it down, and it's gonna be beautiful and roses and pretty, and it's just all going to be wonderful as long as we get rid of any sort of Trump's America and the 75 million people that feel that they were cheated. Yeah. Yeah, you can't silence that. You can't. And like that's what they're trying to do. So like I said, we got two routes, either civil war or class war, or what, if you don't want to call it class war, but it's basically what it is. It's a confrontation of the American people versus their failed government or the failures of their government. You can have a different ideology. You know, some people might be capitalists, definitely on the right, they're capitalists. I'm not a capitalist. I believe capitalism ruins everything it touches, but I believe capitalism is propelled by imperialism. Imperialism all over the world is what we go take oil, we go take what we need. I'm not with that. Some people are with that. Some people want to do that. Like they think like we have the God-given right to, manifest destiny, the Monroe Doctrine, all these things. They think that we have the right to do these things. I do not. But I also don't think I have the right to shut people up and not let them think for themselves, to shut people up and not let them question things that they have every right to question. That doesn't mean that I think that everybody who doesn't agree with me is a right-wing nationalist. And like immediately when Trump won, I wasn't happy when he won in 2016, but I hated Hillary Clinton as well. So I really just felt, like, yeah, I guess, Trump won. Like that's crazy, like I can't believe this guy who has said all these things won. But you have to know why he won and why he continues to have support. And it's not just because everybody is a crazy 75 million or crazy racist maniacs. It's because the Democratic Party failed to provide anything for people and people just left it. And people either left it or they're completely apolitical and they just watch sometimes the mainstream media and they buy whatever they say. So sometimes they vote and whatever it is the case. But nobody trusts our election system. Vast majority of Americans don't trust our election system. This is why the vast majority of Americans don't vote. So to pretend that it's some sort of crazy notion that, ooh, questioning our elections is this right-wing thing is gaslighting. It's like a master level of gaslighting, and people are falling for it because now anytime I mention elections, I'm a right winger. Anytime I mention, oh, I say something like not everybody's a Nazi, ooh, I'm helping the Nazis. Or every time I try to have a more logical conversation with people um, that are so emotionally, just irrationally unhinged, is what I call it. They, smear me and say all these things, and they lie, and it's crazy. They make shit up. Like it, completely to catch me in something, to try to make me look like I'm anti-trans and I'm anti this. Like you have no idea. Like it is so far from the truth. And we're at that moment where these people are being weaponized to be the next minions for the Democratic Party, the next donors, the next whatevers who believe that through reform, through AOC getting higher positions in committees, that's how we're gonna win. And that's not how it's gonna fucking happen. And I'm just so fucking sick and tired of these people and weaponizing, like trying to tokenize identities of minorities like myself to try to get their agenda. And if I don't agree with their agenda, then they call me a Nazi. And the vast majority of the people doing this, in the last few hours were women, white women, and they were like straight up being Karens and like, you know, like going trying to find out where my family lived and all this crap and like completely being off on a lot of things and like just awful, awful, like going after, like people just because I said, hey, like, no, this, I don't think it's okay to shoot for police to shoot a person. I'm consistent. I don't think it's okay for them to shoot BLM protesters. I don't think it's okay for them to shoot unarmed people of color at the rates they do. I don't think it's unfair. It's fair for them to shoot anybody for no reason. It's across the board. Learn to be fucking consistent or shut the fuck up about how you're anti-fascist. Because if you're for censorship, if you're for the crackdown of the surveillance state and the security state on everyday Americans to protect us from domestic terrorism, you're a moron because we literally experienced this years ago. We this is like what, the second, the third time that this is happening and you can't see it. Did you forget about the Espionage Act? Did you forget about the Patriot Act? Did you forget about the spying on Americans that Julian Assange exposed? What's the point of saying you support Julian Assange if you're going to turn around and pretend that, oh, like, yeah, I don't care because they're fascists. So because you deem them being fascists, now they're second class citizens. How are you going to ever change minds? How are you ever going to combat that? You want to go to war? Are you ready? Are you armed? Like, a lot of these people talk like they're going to go fight fascists and they put little memes like, oh, I'm going to go kill a fascist. Like, really? Would you even be able to? Because they fucking beat you to it. They went to the fucking Capitol and they were over there demanding for what it is they were demanding, whether you agree with it or not. They were fucking doing it. Where were you? Where were you on force of vote? Where were you when we were all fighting for Julian Assange and celebrating the fact that he didn't get extradited? Where were you? You wouldn't do anything. In fact, you were denouncing the shit that we were talking about. You were saying that, oh, it doesn't matter. It's symbolic. Well, fucking impeachment is symbolic. That's fucking symbolic. Don't give me that bullshit. Oh, this force to vote is symbolic. No, you just didn't want to hold your fucking electeds accountable because you're too busy making celebrities out of them that you want to worship. Like, I'm so fucking done with these people making excuses for people like AOC, people who have continuously let you down, not just with Nancy Pelosi and voting for her, but with not just with the force of vote, but her foreign policy is disastrous. The fact that she follows Juan Guaido, the fact that she would defer to the caucus leadership, the fact that she hasn't pushed anything regarding election reform, the fact that she hasn't pushed anything regarding whistleblowers, and Julian Assange refused to give a fucking solid answer on that. The fact that she aligns herself with the status quo and is peddling the whole, oh, the YouTubers and Jimmy Dore were violent. Oh, these people, they're violent. And now they're using the same narrative to say that everybody who has dissent is violent. And believe me, if you don't think it's going to affect you, by the time it does, it's too late. You are going to be screwed. That is the next thing that we're seeing. And the military is saying there's going to be martial law. People are saying that this is going to get crazy. I hope not, but I mean, they have thousands of freaking military personnel and security personnel now. They gotta continue the whole grift. They have to continue the whole, oh, look, see, we're protecting the Capitol. We're gonna protect them from all of these uh, rebel terrorist traitors. They're using the same shit that they blame the right of using. When the right says, oh, you're a traitor, blah blah blah, they're using the same exact language. Oh, these are traitors. It's the same fucking shit they're using. Don't get played. We have no friends in DC. We, all of the politicians that all of you on the right and the left have completely pushed up, myself included, Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump, the squad, have let you down. We're at a point where they literally are talking about impeaching, and Russia is mimicking. We're mimicking this. The Trumpers were mimicking Russia when going to the Capitol and pushing their little coup. We have them talking about all that, but giving you crap as people are fucking dying. People are getting sick, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's the fact that they're poor, whether it's the fact that they can't even go to the hospital because the hospitals are all taken up, whether it's the fact that they're losing their small businesses, whatever the case it is, they're losing their house, whatever it is, they're not fucking doing anything for you. Why put all your faith in a politician? And I think people are at that point where they're looking for a new leader. So it's time for us to be the new leaders. It's time for us to understand that we need to organize. We need to actually do something when it comes to holding these people accountable. And the problem is, now that we might want to do that, they're going to crack down on you. Ron Paul, they took his account down on Facebook. Do you think that he's the only one they're going to take down? They've taken down LA City Council, one of the people that fought against protesting, or that fought for rent cancellations, that fought for, against police brutality. And they also posted stuff about holding the mayor accountable for his failures, Mayor Eric Garcetti. We have all multiple leftist podcasters that have been taken down, multiple people on the right that have every right to have a platform, whether you agree with it or not. Steve Bannon has a right to have a fucking platform. I'm sorry, I cannot stand Steve Bannon. I think he's vile. But you censor Steve Bannon, it's going to come back and censor, you're going to censor everybody else eventually. That is what you don't understand. That is fascistic, supporting mass censorship, supporting the FBI, supporting the police state, and police sanctioned state killings. That is fascistic. So to those authoritarian progressives who have become the very thing that they were supposed to fucking fight, you're not going to turn this around on us who actually don't want that shit. And right wingers, because we're the actual fucking left. We're the actual anti imperialist fucking left that's here and that actually wants to do things, that actually wants to change things, that actually wants to unite America in the right way, unite the working class. Am I going to let somebody be a fucking racist to my friend? No, I'm not going to let that happen. So you need to stop misconstruing things and convoluting shit that you don't know what you're talking about because you haven't read. Go read fucking 1984. Go read Brave New World. Go read every fucking novel, every fucking history book. This isn't, he's not fucking Hitler. Stop comparing Trump to Hitler. God, if Trump was Hitler, are you kidding me? George Bush was a far worse president than any other president we've had. What he did had so many effects and consequences that we're still living today. So don't fucking peddle this, ooh, the most dangerous. No, like they wanted you to have that Trump boogeyman focus to get you normally who would have been dissenting, who would have been of all the bombs dropped on innocent people. You don't give a shit about Julian Assange and him rotting away in Belmarsh prison, even though he didn't do anything but be a fucking journalist. And you don't give a shit about immigrants either, because Joe Biden and Obama were deporting more and more millions than any president before. Bullshit. Oh, I care about people of color. No, you don't. You care about being a fucking white knight and being a white savior, and you dismiss and smear people of color who call you out on it. And I can mention Niko House, Brianna Joy Gray, myself, Frank Analysis. I mean, so many of these voices that are on YouTube and that have shows and that have podcasts and that speak out against the hypocrisy of the Democratic establishment. And we're for force of vote and we're doing all these things and we're for Julian Assange getting completely dismissed and completely maligned as Nazi sympathizers because they didn't fall in line for what you wanted them to fall in line with, because they didn't know their place, that they were supposed to be tokenized minorities for your fucking democratic bullshit rebranded progressivism. We're not going to fucking allow that. You can fucking do whatever you want. You can smear people, you can lie, take screenshots, do whatever the fuck you want. It's not going to change what we're doing because we are a threat. We are a threat to the status quo because we are uniters. We unite people based on not ideology, but on the needs of the people. A working class revolution. Malcolm X was a uniter. He was fucking shot and killed by the surveillance state. He wasn't shot because he was simply saying, oh, I'm anti-fascist, I'm for censorship. No, he was shot. He took up arms. They marched to the Capitol. The Black Panthers did. Fred Hampton was shot because he was a fucking threat, because he was a uniter, because he threatened the police state. This is just the police minion. No, the police state. Because when you unite people, black, white, gay, straight, everybody, and you tell them we're being fucked by the system and they listen, you're a fucking threat. And the security state doesn't like those. And they put their little fucking minions in there to turn people against the other. And that's what they're doing right now to a lot of people. And don't think I don't fucking see it, because I fucking see it. And you're not going to pass one over me because I have a solid bullshit detector. And I have a fucking shitload of amazing people who know and who see this. And vast majority of Americans are waking up and they're realizing that they're getting screwed and they don't know what to do. So we have to be the most outspoken voices, and we can deal with this bullshit because we're going to do it regardless. And it doesn't matter if people hate you for it, because the truth is the most important thing that needs to get out there. So, guys, I cannot see the super chats or anything because Johnny is not on the ones and twos, he's somewhere else. But we will be back to LA tomorrow. We're going to be returning and picking up there. I'm going to be trying to go to DC and cover things on January 20th. I'm going to be trying to cover as much as I can of this, have some more videos to release. I have things I want to look into regarding the stimulus package and what was in there for the repair of the Capitol, you guys, because that shit was in there, like repairing the Capitol before anything happened. And that is very, very suspicious, right? And so remember that the coup that is going on is the coup of the rights of the American people, your right to dissent, your right to protest, your right to have privacy. That is the major coup that everybody is fucking ignoring, that nobody's paying attention to because they're still focused on the boogeyman of Donald Trump, even as he's leaving office. Even as he's leaving office. Well, what no consequences for him? Well, give me consequences for everybody else that ever did fucking something. I don't care what happens to Trump. I care about what happens to the American people. And that's what I want people to see. Do not swallow a narrative just because you're scared. It's okay to question. It's okay to really look at other information. And it's okay to know that the record of the establishment and of people like Nancy Pelosi and politicians has always been to lie to you. Of the security state has always been to lie to you. Of the FBI has always been to lie to you. So why the hell would you trust them now in a time where they're so scared and vulnerable that you're going to turn on them and hold them accountable? Remember that.